Hello, everyone. Welcome to This Buns Forum Friday. On Forum Fridays, I have Mark Florka. Hi, Mark.
Hi.
Mark and I are going to go into the forums and discuss some of the important questions that are in our Facebook forums. And Mark, are you ready?
Yes, can
Please
I
go.
maybe just sort of review some of the stats a
Oh,
little bit?
yes, we forgot to review the stats. Let's
Yeah,
review the
it's kind
stats.
of interesting. It's been kind of cool in that we are almost at 3,000. We are at
Nice.
2,835 members right now, right?
I saw a spike a few weeks
Yep.
ago.
And
Yeah,
there's been a 9.35% increase in the past month. And
interesting.
that represents 362 requests this month that have been approved, because there's been about 140 that have been declined. So if you don't want to answer some basic questions, you can't come in, right? um,
I mean, how difficult is it? Answer how many questions, Mark?
we've added a couple, but they're very targeted in that, the first thing we ask is whether or not you're a home baker. And even if you're a professional baker, it's okay to be a home baker, right? So that's a yes or no question. And then it goes on to ask about accreditation in terms of if you have any degrees or things like that. And then it asks about the type of position you are in the baking industry. And I think that's where we then start to weed out some of the ones that are not
Spammers.
professional, right?
Spammers.
Yes.
We don't want spammers on here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the whole reason why we do this. And we want to make sure that the discussions are at a professional level,
Yeah.
Instead of people just coming in off the street and asking, why do we need sugar in formulas, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's important that we keep those questions there. I
Yeah.
mean, all you need to do is answer those questions and join our free forum.
Yeah, because I
So
mean, everybody's time is valuable, even though the
yeah,
forum is free. We want to be able to help them quickly so that they can find answers and things like that. I want to start encouraging people to use hashtags as well, so that that'll help us locate subject matter. So that if you have a question about tortillas, hashtag
hashtag,
tortillas. So then
right,
that way you can search and find everything about tortillas. But
correct.
the good side is that almost two-thirds, or just over two-thirds of the membership is actively engaged on the platform. So in the past month, of the 2,800 members, over 1,800 have been either posting, liking, commenting, or things like that. So
Right.
we have really good engagement.
Yes.
The most popular day shifts around. Last month
Yes.
it was Friday, and the most popular time last month was 4 p.m. PST. So it's kind of interesting, right?
Right.
So yeah, I wanted to kind of squeeze that in because it's good news. We keep growing. We're not a stagnant group, and so there's lots of great information there all the time too.
Hey, Mark. I've also wanted to tell you, great job on the webinar last week that
Oh,
you
thank you. Yep, it was
hosted. That
super
was
interesting. It was really
it
good.
was super good.
Yeah,
Great job on that one.
thank
Yeah,
you.
if those of you have not seen it, it's now on the Baker Academy. You can watch the entire session. You just need to sign in. It's free. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah,
So are
thank
you
you.
ready for the first question?
Sure.
Okay. So we want to cover this first question on phyllo dough
Uh-huh.
and how does this baker use the phyllo dough with some kind of a cabbage filling, but the cabbage filling keeps weeping.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the
Well,
discussion surrounding that?
the simple secret to this is cooking, is braising. So the phyllo dough, for those who may not be as familiar with it, perhaps, is like a flaky pastry dough. It's a 1/10 of a millimeter thick pastry that is layered with butter in between, or melted fat, and that makes it flaky and crunchy. And So the phyllo is great for crunchy for fillings like that, but it'll get soggy if water weeps into it, like you mentioned from a vegetable. So any vegetables, whether it be cabbage, spinach, or other things like that, sometimes people like to use other leafy vegetables in these types of fillings. They need to be cooked first. And cooking, they call it to sweat it off. And what this does is that it cooks and softens the cell membranes so that they become more flexible and expandable. And of course, it may bind some of the water as well. Because otherwise, what happens during the freezing process is the water expands while it's freezing, and then it bursts these rigid cells, and then the water weeps out. So not only do you lose all the water, but now your vegetable becomes very tough and rubbery because now there's nothing really holding it together anymore. So the simple answer is cook it first. So sweat it off with some savory ingredients like aromatics. In other words, things like onions, peppers, stuff like that. Give it some flavor and then put it in as your filling.
So you think that by making it wheat first through a heat transfer process, it will keep the phyllo dough crispy?
Yes, it'll help keep the phyllo crispy. The other thing you can add to that, if it's a really wet type of filling, is either an instant starch. I usually prefer tapioca just because of the texture, because it also survives the freeze thaw process a lot better. Or breadcrumbs is also a very popular one.
Oh, that's a great idea. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. So let's go on to the next challenge. We are talking about extending the shelf life of a mini cupcake longer than 5 days. What can we do here, Mark?
Yeah, this is someone who has developed a cupcake and it is popular, and they now want to expand into a grocery store. But the problem they're having is that after 5 days, they're seeing mold. Well, the problem with this is most of the time is the very first thing to look at is sanitation. Hygiene protocols, making sure that you are not only wearing gloves whenever you're making contact, but you're always wearing clean gloves. So as your gloves become soiled, or if you stopped working on the cupcake and touched something else, new gloves, right? Because otherwise you're just transferring contamination. The most problem usually with cupcakes and going mold, as they're describing, is probably the icing. And so it could be that they have too much water in the icing, not enough sugar, or just simply also, again, not very good sanitary processes.
Did they mention where the mold is? Is it on the icing?
They just mentioned that they're getting moldy.
Okay.
They weren't that
usually
specific.
Mold wouldn't happen on the icing because icing's usually just fat and sugar.
If it's high enough sugar, yes. But some add so much water in to stretch it and to whip it. If you don't use a boiled sugar solution, your water is not clean enough. It's the dirt is coming actually from the water, right? And you know what? Yeah, and you know what I usually recommend for most bakers to do when it comes to shelf-stable products, in terms of fillings and toppings, don't add any water in any kind of form whatsoever. Yep. Add your liquid or liquidy polymer in the form of fat, cocoa butter, even marshmallow, that kind of topping or filling is going to last a longer shelf life. You need to think about water activity. Water activity in most fillings and toppings are way low until you add water in it, right? So try to eliminate the water, cook it down, whatever you can, and just get rid of the water. So water activity is key. Check out our topic on water activity, and that should give you lots and lots of hints on how to improve the shelf life to prevent mold. Yeah, to your point, I've done Cineresis icing tests when I was working for ADM, and we'd have icing in a hot cabinet at 30 degrees Celsius for several days, more than 5 days, usually up to a week, and we would never have mold on it.
Yeah, and that's do you remember a few years ago, people were just really, really, really loud and obnoxious about McDonald's French fries not molding over a period of 5 years. And then they take out a typical diner's French fries with no preservatives and it molded like within a week, right? So to me, it's not about preservatives. You didn't put any preservatives in those fries. Nobody puts preservatives in fries, okay? It's water activity. It's how much water activity is available for mold and also how clean your surface is. So water activity, man, that's key.
Well, yes, not to dwell on the McDonald's subject, but keep in mind the McDonald's French fries are shoestring fries. They're very small and thin, so they cook thoroughly. They absorb a lot of fat, so there's almost no moisture left in them by the time they're fried. And that fry process is pretty darn hot, so they're well sterilized. Whereas in your average diner, they are probably not blanching the fries properly. They're nice, big, thick fries. So they're getting cooked through, but they're full of moisture. They don't absorb as much fat because they are such big, thick fries. So, people will want to hate because they want to hate, right? Not because because McDonald's does not use any preservatives in their French fries, because I know the person who's responsible for them, and I can assure you, she's told me all about the process.
All right, let's go on to the next question. And we have a baker who is having a problem with the bottom of his bread getting getting dense and pretty hard over a few days.
Yeah,
What's the discussion on that one?
It's a bit of a mystery. And I'm going to try and share the picture here quickly, just so that everybody can see what I'm talking about. And so, can you see that piece of bread there? And in the bottom, you can see it's really dense and thick, and it is that is a part that dries up. So that is what they're talking about, and it looks very interesting. And so we're not sure exactly what it is. He hasn't shared the specific formula yet, I don't think.
Is it I didn't see properly. Is it a Pullman loaf?
It looks like a Pullman loaf. Yep, looks like a small
Is the
Pullman loaf.
denseness on the top or the bottom of the Pullman
The
loaf?
bottom. Yeah.
Okay.
It's in the bottom, and
Right.
it's mostly off to one side, right? But it's all along the bottom and off. And he says it's a direct fired oven. However, it looks like it might be an air pocket in the pan that insulates it so the heat can't get through. Or there's a cold spot in the oven or something.
I feel like every time there is a bottom layer kind of problem, it's got a lot to do with dough instability. So a few things that could cause that is temperature of the dough. Very simple. Keep the dough temperature as low as possible so that it's not as delicate, that it can tolerate the processing step. Proofing too high of a temperature really, really destabilizes your dough. So that's the key thing to look into is how high are you proofing at? The higher you proof, the more your dough is going to break down.
Yep.
Okay. And that's why it becomes dense. It's just breakdown of dough, which would require you then, I think, without changing anything, increasing your dough conditioner usage is going to prevent this problem. But it's just a band-aid, right? It's a band-aid on a process that is not optimized. So to optimize your process, you really need to lower down the dough temperature, keep a really low proofer temperature. What would you suggest, Mark?
85 to 90 would be typical.
There you go.
Yeah.
Very few high output bakeries, proof at that temperature, but definitely below 95 is the way to go. If you're hitting 100 103 degrees Fahrenheit in your proofer, it's too hot. This is the reason why you're getting this issue.
Mhm.
And whenever cells crumble and mash together, there's just going to be more starch retrogradation in those areas.
Okay, yeah, yep.
And that's why the
sense.
network is so strong there. That's why it's
Yeah.
harder, right? So I can't tell you other than the fact that your dough is unstable.
Yep.
And you got to stabilize your dough in all parts of your process.
Mhm.
One of the things that people forget is sometimes when you push that dough rack across broken concrete or across broken tile, guess what do you do? You pound the bottom parts of the dough, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of like you got to soften the blow to your dough. Don't push it for too long across many broken tiles. Okay. If you're going to continue doing that, then you got to increase your dough conditioners to make your dough more stabilized, right?
Yep.
So it's a whole bunch of things that
Yep.
causes dough to destabilize and just to mash up.
Yeah, and that's the magic. That's the art of baking. That majority of the time there is no single magic bullet answer to fix all the problems. It's
No.
and there again, the more detail we know about the process and the formula and everything else, then the easier it is to help them. And that's
Right.
why consultants become so valuable, because they can come in and physically be there and actually see what's happening, that things that you may forget to communicate because it's an everyday process that you take for granted.
Not just consultants though. I mean, I think this is one of the training issues that we've always experienced in a lot of bakeries. And if you take, just a few of our classes in bread production, that is dough processing, baking and proofing, those processes, you will learn what are the optimal temperatures to target, because those are the temperatures that you need to hit in order for you to not like use dough conditioners at 1 or 3%, right? So those kind of knowledge and training and kind of understanding the process is really going to help you solve the bread issue all around.
Yep. And the more people you have trained, the more thoughtful eyes you have on the product to give a critical judgment to it too, right?
That's true. That's true. Okay, let's go for the next question. There is this discussion on brioche bun made with ghee. What's the issue there?
Ghee is clarified butter. I just wanted to clarify that. Right?
I like that.
I had to throw a dad joke in there. So this is someone who produces brioche buns on a regular basis, but on this particular occasion, I guess they didn't plan their production quite right, and all they had left on butter was ghee. So they needed to make the buns, so they put ghee in to the dough instead of regular unsalted butter. So the only difference here is that, there's two differences. Number one, the obvious thing is when ghee is clarified, so the whey has been removed and the water has been removed. So don't forget, butter is approximately 14% water, right? And then there's a bunch of whey, like milk solids, like lactose and protein. And it's about 82% fat most of the time, 80 to 82. And so when you have ghee, you basically have something that is pure fat. And now it's no longer crystallized in the uniform manner that it was before. So good dough mixing is helpful here, because if you use a fat that is no longer crystallized, it changes the cell structure within the dough. You can end up with larger, more open cells, right? But other than that, he's just making the brioche richer by, if he's pound for pound using the same amount of ghee as he was butter, he's got about almost 18% more fat in there than he did before, right?
Yeah.
Plus on
It'll
top
be
of
a
that,
delicious bun.
yeah, they're gonna taste good too. Yeah,
It's
they're
gonna
gonna be
taste
very
good.
rich. So,
It's gonna have
you know,
a particular ghee taste to it.
yeah. Can you do it? Absolutely. If you can recover the cost to do that,
Yeah.
a little more power to you. You have to understand and know your clients. Are you in the right area with people with the disposable income and the appreciation for the flavor and things like that, that now your brioche bun is not going to be 250, now it's going to be 325 or something like that,
Yeah.
because you have to recover these costs as well to maintain profitability. So
Exactly.
yeah, it's that's a fun one. It's interesting, but yeah, so like brioche with brown butter.
Mm.
That could be good.
That's delicious. All right, we have time for one more, and this one covers gum dispersion. What
Hmm.
specific gums are we talking about, Mark?
So it sounds like they're doing a gluten-free type of production. And so they're asking about xanthan and sodium, the NaCMC, which would be sodium carboxyl methylcellulose, right?
Ooh, yeah,
Um,
fun.
so instead of
That's an easy one.
yeah, so the thing is, yeah, is a good vortex in water is going to be best to not get lumps and things like that.
So why wouldn't you dry blend it first, Mark? Isn't dry blend the best?
Because you're going to compete with the proteins and the other ingredients in the dry blend. So the hydration is critical with the gums. They may not get hydrated properly.
Yeah,
Uh,
but if there's a starch component or there's a modified starch component or even fibers, I would truly blend them with fibers first before putting in the water.
you could. The
Yeah.
thing to be careful with there then is that to make sure that you have an extra fine type of powder, because especially things like CMC, they often come in a sort of a granular form. And I hope that doesn't show in the recording.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. They come in a granular form, which then may not disperse properly in the dough if you have it in the dry blend. Um, Most of the time, it's recommended with gums to disperse them in liquid first. That's
Right.
the gum manufacturers usually say that. Let's put it that way.
Right. And if you have any more questions on gluten-free, you can always visit our academy. There are a few papers on gluten-free we've written, and I hope this help you out as well.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah.
that's
Visit the Baker's Academy. It's loaded with stuff. It is that has been built up so much now. And of course, it's great courses that are so affordable. And even some of the old resources that are still there are great too, like the ingredient resources, but especially the Baker Academy. And drop us a line in the Baking Industry Professionals group. Let us know how you're doing, how we are doing. Are we saying the right things? Do you want to hear certain topics in Forum Friday or the Baked in Science podcast and so on? Please, let us know. Shout out.
absolutely. And when I have time, I'll go on there. When Mark has time, he goes on there. But we
Mhm.
can't be on there 24/7. That's
No,
why we have our peer-to-peer community answering your questions.
exactly.
So thank you everyone for joining in.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mark. I really appreciate all your knowledge share on that channel.
Thank
And
you.
we will see you again next month.
Yep.
Bye, everyone.
Yep. Have a great weekend. See you later.